All of the best training in the world won't do anyone any good if they can't recover adequately from it. In this video, I want to talk briefly about how to try to make the most out of your recovery by enhancing the quality of your sleep. I think everyone intuitively understands that we need to get good training in and then allow our bodies the chance to recover and adapt and get fitter from that training. And it's during the recovery period that we actually get better. And it's not training that makes us better, but training compounded with the recovery afterward that allows us to get better. In our training, most people intuitively know this. They do a hard workout. They maybe take a few days easy or off and try to recover so that the next time they do a hard workout, they just keep moving forward instead of doing hard workout after hard workout after hard workout where you would just get destroyed because you're just getting weaker and weaker and wearing yourself out from spending too much energy and creating too much stress that your body can't handle it. So all of us kind of, tend to allow time to recover, but there's a lot of other things that go into the quality of that time that we allow for recovery. Two of the biggest things that we have a lot of control over are our diet and our sleep. I think because diet is a multivariable and complex system and there's a lot of different food choices that we make and we can choose, when we're going to eat and what we're going to eat and how we're going to prepare it, it's something that can take up a lot more, mental activity to analyze and plan and act on whatever we think that we're supposed to do. That takes a lot of attention. I think a lot of people miss out a lot on the recovery that they could have if they put a little bit of that time and attention into trying to improve the quality of their sleep by making maybe one or two or several small habit changes that you can, maybe get used to after, practicing it for a few weeks until it becomes just a habitual practice that you never have to think about again and then you automatically have a little better recovery. And just like anything in training, whether it's our diet or our sleep or the way we train, habits have a lot of leverage. So think about all the things, don't think about all the things, but think about a lot of the little things that you might do every day, whether it's eating or sleeping or, when you train, when you do anything that has a big impact on your body. Think about whether or not there might be some adjustment that you could make to that, because a lot of times if we do the same things, but we just change the order or we change the timing of those things, it can have a big impact on how well our bodies react to that activity. So this video I want to focus on sleep because I think there's a lot of opportunity there for a lot of people. So there are 7 main habits or practices that I would suggest, considering what your current routine is like and maybe consider changing it, because I have in this video 7 things that I've found to be very useful for enhancing the quality of my sleep. And you could group them into just 3 main categories. One of them, and probably the most important, broad category of things, is to try to use light and your exposure to light to your advantage and not don't allow it to be a detriment to your recovery. So specifically on the topic of light, I would definitely try to avoid very bright lights in the few hours before you go to bed. Try to avoid blue lights and full spectrum white light. Our bodies are made in such a way that when we're exposed to blue light, it reduces melatonin in our bodies. And in the natural environment, we're out in the daytime and there's a lot of white light and we don't have much melatonin. But in the evening, the sun goes down, the light gets red, and then it gets very dark. And that whole process of reducing light and changing the color of the light to be a more red hue creates a signal to our bodies, and our bodies know that it's getting time to sleep. We produce a lot of melatonin, and then we go to sleep. And because we have a lot of melatonin and we're asleep, those first few hours after we fall asleep is when we get the most growth hormone production in our body, and that is a big reason why sleep is so crucial for athletic development and recovery. Obviously, there's a lot of other things that go on while we're asleep, most of them having to do with our brain and kind of natural cleaning processes that happen there, and also the formation of new memories and new learning. But for our body, the amount of time that we have to sleep and the regularity of that sleep is really crucial, and in part, that spike of melatonin and subsequent spike of growth hormone while we're asleep is very crucial. And if you expose your body to a lot of blue light in the last hour before you go to bed, it disrupts that pattern and your body doesn't have as potent of a circadian rhythm throughout the day, and so it kind of disrupts the whole thing and you don't get the same level of recovery that you could if you avoided blue light and white light late in the day. And to help with that, one of the other things that I would specifically focus on doing is on any computer or phone, there might be already a night mode or a redshift type of mode that you can turn on. I would try to see if you can get it to turn on automatically a few hours before you try to go to bed, or if it doesn't already have something, if you don't have something already on your device. On Android phones, you can get an app called Twilight. On your computer, you could get an app called f.lux, and both of those you can program them to the extent to which you want the screen to dim and the extent to which you want it to shift to a redder hue at night. And so you have a lot of control over that, but you can basically just make it automatic that your screen reflects the time of day that it is. So even if you're working at 9 or 10 at night, or you're, I don't know, watching YouTube videos or something like that, like this one, you won't be exposing yourself to a lot of blue light, and it won't mess up your circadian rhythms nearly as much or at all compared to if you were looking at just a full intensity blues, a screen that has a lot of blue light in it. So definitely get one of those apps if you don't already have that. While you're asleep, try to make sure that your room is protected from light pollution. Most of us have maybe an alarm clock that has an LED that's relatively bright, or maybe we have a window that lets in some light from outside. Try to minimize light as much as possible while you're sleeping, and if you can wake up in the middle of the night and see your way around, it's probably brighter than it should be, or at least in an ideal world it could be nice if it was bright, if it was darker. So try to do everything you can to make it as dark as possible. Try to make it relatively cool, not cold, but comfortably cool in your room, and also see if you can't do something to prevent noise pollution as well. Silence is very helpful for your brain. I don't think that it necessarily is something that would help with your athletic recovery, but it's definitely a good therapy for your brain and allows it to function well. And then if at all possible, try to use a light alarm or the natural increase of light in the morning to help your body to wake up. I know that a lot of people don't have the luxury of waking up around when the sun rises, and maybe they have to wake up at 6 a.m. or something like that. If that's the case, I would definitely consider looking into getting a light alarm, which basically just gradually gets brighter over the course of 20 or 30 minutes so that you get a natural signal to your brain without a really loud, obnoxious noise that it's time to wake up. And it generally is much more comfortable, and it helps to use your body's natural hardwired mechanisms to wake you up in a more natural way, and often can help you feel more rested when you wake up that way, as opposed to having your phone start beeping at you at some arbitrary time. And then in the wintertime, for a lot of people, there's a sizable minority of people that have seasonal affective disorder, which is a mild to moderate depression that you can get in the wintertime because it's not as bright out and you don't get as much exposure to the light, among other things perhaps. I mean, people might not go out as much because it's colder and wetter and not as pleasant to go outside. But if you don't get enough, if you don't get adequate amounts of daylight exposure during the winter or in the morning specifically, I would consider getting a light therapy box that will just emit a very full spectrum white light at a pretty high intensity so that you can help alleviate some of the symptoms of seasonal affective disorder if that's something that affects you, or even if you haven't maybe thought about it in those terms, or you're not aware of that disorder. If you just feel grumpy or not as energetic in the wintertime, consider a cheap therapy light could maybe help you have a little bit more energy, have a little bit more regularity with your sleeping and waking patterns throughout the day, and might have a positive impact on your mood during the winter. And then the two other things that are not specifically related to light that I think can help you get better quality sleep and better quality rest is to try to make sure that your sleeping habit is very regular. And I think it's great if you can go to bed at the same time and wake up at the same time every day. If you are only going to focus on one thing, I would try to focus on going to bed at about the same time every night as much as possible. I would much rather have that circadian rhythm and the melatonin production in my body and the growth hormone production be as regular and as strong and potent as possible. I think that that's going to be most impacted by going through a similar nighttime routine and a similar bedtime as much as possible. And then lastly, caffeine is, a relatively benign substance. I mean, it's the most commonly consumed drug in the world, and definitely among cyclists, coffee is a very embedded part of cycling culture, and so a lot of people, cyclists or otherwise, often drink 2 or 3 or 5 cups of coffee every day. And generally, that's probably a good thing. It seems like there's a lot of studies that would indicate that coffee consumption is has a positive impact on your health generally. But I would definitely try to avoid having caffeine late in the day. So I would try to cut it off like early afternoon, like maybe 2 or 3 p.m. So you have at least 6, 7, 8 hours between when you have your last bit of caffeine and when you're trying to go to bed. Some studies have shown that even just having caffeine like 5 or 6 hours from when you go to bed, it has a negative impact on the quality of your sleep. So, try to help your body not be stimulated too late in the day so that you can sleep faster when you go to bed and you can sleep with better quality when you're there. And just as like a kind of a bonus idea that isn't so much about the hardwiring of our bodies, but maybe a bit about the hardwiring of our brains, I would encourage you to try to eliminate or reduce the amount of emotionally exciting content that you consume late in the day. When you look at maybe, the New York Times, or you go on Facebook and you see people sharing news stories that are maybe meant to be somewhat inflammatory, that does excite a part of your brain that controls the fight or flight response and, makes you agitated that things are unpleasant in the world. And that's one of the things that's great about exercise. It helps you to be able to cope with that more readily and also come up with creative solutions to the problems of the world. But specifically, if you want to be well informed about what's going on in the world, I would encourage you to maybe not do that in the last hour before you go to bed, so you're not stressed or agitated or angry or anxious right before you're trying to sleep. And yeah, the last thing I would suggest maybe is try some sort of mindfulness practice, whether you wanted to meditate, or you just wanted to sit down and read quietly, or you just wanted to take like 2 minutes and do some breathing exercises and just try to like calm your body down and give your brain some space to kind of let go of the thoughts and worries of the day so that you can go to bed in a peaceful state and be ready to sleep and get the most out of it. I hope some of those thoughts are useful to you, and definitely let me know if there's anything you would like me to cover in future videos, and I hope you enjoyed watching this. I'll talk to you later. Bye.